They said everything from the Vance estate was cursed, that the walls bled salt water when the tide rose too high, and that every mirror reflected the wrong version of you. But Elias Ward didn't believe in curses. He believed in value. The painting called to him through the dust and mildew, its eyes glinting with a damp, lifelike sheen no varnish could explain. What if an object could dream, and you were in it? Why did every owner vanish after touching it once? And if beauty demanded a sacrifice, how much of himself was Elias willing to give? The auctioneer's gavel fell like thunder, and silence followed. In that stillness, the painting seemed to breathe. Elias smiled, unaware he had just bought his reflection's last heartbeat. That night, Elias placed the painting in his apartment, above the old fireplace he never lit. The storm outside howled like an animal trapped beneath the earth. As the lights flickered, the portrait's eyes gleamed faintly, reflecting every flash of lightning as though they were alive. He told himself it was moisture, old varnish, tricks of reflection. But the human brain knows when it's being watched. He turned the frame toward the wall. Yet even with its face hidden, the sensation persisted. A slow, crawling awareness creeping down the spine, whispering, "You brought me home." Sleep refused to come. The apartment creaked like a ship on dark waters. Shadows lengthened, stretching unnaturally across the ceiling. Elias dreamed of the woman in the painting whispering his name in a voice that was not hers, a chorus of all who had ever looked into her eyes. When he woke, the painting faced him again, perfectly centered on the wall. His heart hammered. He hadn't moved it. Mara Keene visited that afternoon, drawn by curiosity and unease. She knew the Vance estate's history. Every heir who kept the painting was found staring at it, eyes open, heart stopped. Elias laughed it off, though his smile was tight. As she spoke, he caught the faintest twitch in the painted irises behind her shoulder. For a second, he thought the portrait had winked. By evening, the whispers began. Faint, rhythmic, like someone breathing inside the walls. Elias pressed his ear to the plaster. Nothing. Yet, when he looked back, the painting's frame had shifted, tilted just enough to catch the room's reflection. The reflection smiled when he did not. Days passed, but time in Elias's apartment began to lose shape. The clock on the wall ticked irregularly, like a heart unsure if it should keep beating. Every reflection showed the painting differently, sometimes dull, sometimes bright, and sometimes with eyes that no longer looked where they should. He stopped answering calls, stopped opening the blinds. Each night he'd sit across from it, daring it to move. The silence between them thickened until it felt like something alive, something waiting. In that stillness, he realized the truth he didn't want to believe. He hadn't bought the painting. It had chosen him. When Mara returned, Elias had scrawled notes across his walls, sketches of eyes, dozens of them, staring back. He spoke of patterns hidden in brushstrokes, of a pulse beneath the paint. Mara recorded his words quietly, her voice trembling. The portrait's gaze followed her, even as she turned away, like a compass drawn to her heartbeat. In one brief, cruel flash of intuition, she wondered if every line in the painting was a vein, still carrying something warm inside. Elias's dreams deepened. He saw the woman from the painting seated in his apartment, whispering lullabies in reverse. She told him she had been trapped for so long that every owner who stared long enough became her prey. The dream felt wet, the air heavy with salt and rot. When he woke, the room smelled of ocean water. The carpet beneath the painting was damp. Mara researched Clara Vance's last days, an artist obsessed with capturing eternity. Each model she painted died soon after completion. Local records hinted she vanished into her final work. Mara felt a chill, realizing that portrait was the same Elias now owned. She called him, but the phone only emitted a slow, rhythmic sound, a breath, drawn too close to the receiver. When Mara arrived that night, Elias was gone. The painting sat alone on the floor, leaning against the wall as if recently moved. The air was cold, the lights buzzing faintly. On the wall above it Written in charcoal was a single phrase, "She's awake." Mara felt something behind her shift. Soft, deliberate, close enough to feel its breath. Mara left the apartment that night with the painting wrapped in a blanket, its weight unnervingly warm against her chest. She thought she heard whispers inside the folds, soft, rhythmic, like someone breathing through the fabric. The streets were slick with rain, neon reflections stretching like veins beneath her feet. She brought it to the local museum, locking it in a storage room. She swore she'd never open again. But the next morning, the curator called in panic. The painting was hanging in Gallery 2, perfectly framed, and no one had moved it. Security footage showed only static where the storage hallway should have been. The painting hung among portraits of strangers, yet it drew every gaze. Visitors complained of nausea, of seeing their reflections wink back from the varnish. Security guards refused to patrol the wing after closing. One claimed he saw the painted eyes blink in the dark. Another found faint handprints on the inside of the glass, child-sized, as if pressed from within. The museum director tried to remove it, but the frame splintered, and blood, not paint, dripped from the crack. Elias returned 3 days later, barefoot and pale, standing outside the museum at dawn. His eyes were hollow, yet alive with something foreign. "It's not finished," he whispered to Mara, who met him in disbelief. "She needs me to finish it." He spoke as though possessed, his tone calm but reverent, like a priest before an altar. When she tried to stop him, his reflection in the museum glass turned to face her independently. That night, the painting was gone again. Surveillance captured Elias entering the gallery, yet never leaving. The frame lay on the floor, empty, the canvas cut from within. Mara stared at the footage until her vision blurred. For a moment, the final frame showed something impossible. His hand pressed against the inside of the empty frame, fingers twitching like they were learning to move again. Mara drove to the lighthouse that overlooked the estate. It was the only place untouched by modern light, the last remnant of the coast's forgotten tragedies. She carried the frame, now void of its painting, and waited for dawn. The sea groaned beneath her, the waves breaking like slow applause. When she looked into the empty frame, she didn't see herself. She saw Elias, smiling faintly, his eyes the color of the storm. For weeks, Mara tried to convince herself it was grief. The mind invents faces in patterns, voices in static, meaning in the meaningless. But at night, the sea began whispering Elias's name, and sometimes her own. She found salt on her windowsill each morning, though she lived miles from the coast. The empty frame leaned in the corner of her living room, and when the wind passed through it, she swore she heard breathing. In the still hours before dawn, she saw shadows move across the wall, slow, human, and searching for light. She visited the archives again, searching for answers. In brittle pages, a forgotten entry surfaced. To capture the soul, one must offer reflection. Clara Vance's journals described binding essence to pigment, trapping memory between light and oil. Each portrait was a mirror turned inward. Mara's pulse quickened as she read of the awakening, the day the frame breaks and the watcher becomes the watched. She realized Elias's body hadn't disappeared. It had transferred. Mara dreamed of the painting again, but this time the woman inside wasn't Clara. It was her. Her own eyes stared back from the portrait, wide and unblinking, painted with unbearable precision. Elias stood behind her in the dream, whispering that he had finished the work. When she woke, her mirror was covered in streaks of dark pigment, the same color used in the portrait's shadows. The brush rested on her nightstand, wet. By the third night, the frame began to hum softly, resonating with the rhythm of her heartbeat. The sound was low, tender and intimate, like someone whispering just behind her ear. When she lifted it to the light, she saw faint shapes forming across the glass, outlines of her face, her hair. Her open mouth caught mid-breath. The portrait was rebuilding itself, brushstroke by brushstroke, from the inside out. She realized too late that it didn't need a painter anymore. It was painting her. When the phone rang, she almost didn't answer. A voice, soft, melodic, and unmistakably Elias's, spoke on the other end. "It's beautiful now," he whispered. "She sees through you." Mara dropped the receiver. From across the room, the glass in the frame rippled like disturbed water. Then, slowly, a painted hand pressed outward from within, dragging streaks of black oil across the inside surface as the whispering turned into breathing. The days that followed blurred together like a fever dream. Mara stopped eating, stopped speaking to anyone. The air inside her apartment thickened with the scent of linseed oil and salt. The frame now held her reflection at all hours, even when she wasn't near it. Sometimes, when she blinked, she saw herself standing inside the glass, breathing, moving, but out of sync. It smiled when she didn't. At night, she felt a pulse radiating from the frame, matching the rhythm of her veins. The more she looked, the more she felt her body forgetting where it ended, and the portrait began. The museum director called her in desperation. The painting had returned again, this time showing both Clara and Elias within the same frame, their faces blurred together, eyes staring out like mirrors. The air around it pulsed with a low hum that rattled the glass display cases. "It's changing," he said, voice shaking. "It's growing." Mara drove there, heart pounding, knowing that whatever was awakening in the canvas was calling for her. As Mara approached, the humming deepened into a voice. 1,000 whispers folded into one. The painted figures turned their heads toward her in unison, eyes alive and waiting. "You finished what I began." Elias's voice echoed from within the frame. "Now step closer." The museum lights flickered, glass cases shivering as air pressure dropped. Her body moved without permission, her breath shallow, drawn forward by something ancient and relentless. The power failed completely. In that darkness, only the glow of the painting remained, soft, phosphorescent, almost beautiful. She reached out. Her fingers met the glass, warm as flesh. Then it gave way, rippling like liquid. Hands reached out from within, Elias's and Clara's, grasping hers, pulling gently at first, then with desperate strength. She didn't scream. She only whispered, "I see it now." The surface sealed behind her with the sound of a slow breath closing. When the lights returned, the gallery was silent. The painting hung perfectly centered, restored to pristine condition. But now there were 3 figures inside: Clara, Elias, and Mara, each face serene, each gaze following whoever dared to look too long. Visitors described feeling an odd warmth near it, as though someone stood behind them, breathing softly. The museum director resigned the next day. The painting was moved to storage again, but some nights, the security feed still flickers to life, showing Mara inside the frame, turning slowly, her lips moving, as if whispering someone's name. Months passed. The painting vanished from the museum during a renovation. The crate it was stored in found splintered open, the air around it thick with salt. No one admitted to seeing who took it, yet several workers quit, swearing they heard someone humming in the dark storage wing. The song was old, wordless, and impossibly close. Rumors spread through the town again, of a figure wandering the coast at night, carrying a framed object wrapped in linen. Locals whispered the same phrase when the wind howled. "The eyes are looking again." A small antique shop reopened near the harbor, selling curiosities salvaged from the estate ruins. Among them was a single item covered in dust, a framed portrait labeled only "Untitled." The shopkeeper swore it arrived with no record, but whenever he tried to move it, the glass fogged from within. He joked to a customer that it almost breathes. The customer smiled faintly and said, "They all do, eventually." At night, he began to dream. The same corridor over and over, long, narrow, lined with portraits that blinked when unseen. A woman's voice murmured from behind one of them, always closer each time he turned away. On the fourth night, he woke to find the portrait standing in his bedroom. Its glass glistened like the surface of a pond, rippling faintly with his every breath. He stared into it until he realized he was seeing himself blink from inside. He brought the painting back to the harbor at dawn, intending to throw it into the sea. But when he peeled back the dust cloth, he froze. The three faces inside were no longer static. Their expressions had changed. Elias was smiling now. Clara's head was slightly turned, and Moira's hand pressed against the glass, reaching outward as if expecting him. The tide surged higher, the horizon blurred by fog, and her voice drifted through the mist. "Don't leave me alone." When the townspeople found his boat drifting empty the next morning, the painting lay inside, unharmed, propped upright at the stern. It was dry, despite the waves, untouched by salt or decay. Now, it hangs again in the window of the harbor shop, marked for sale, waiting. The fog outside never truly lifts anymore, and when passers-by glance through the glass, they swear they see someone's reflection move behind them, even when they're standing alone. Years later, the harbor shop closed. The windows were boarded, the walls stripped bare, but the painting remained, unclaimed, unsold, untouched. Dust settled thick upon its frame, yet the glass never dulled. When the new owners renovated, they tried to remove it, but the hooks beneath the wood refused to give, as though fused to the wall. They covered it with a curtain instead. But each night, when the wind rolled in from the sea, the curtain lifted softly, as if drawn back by a curious hand. One winter, a documentary crew arrived, researching local folklore. The legend of the Vance portrait intrigued them. The cursed artwork that ate reflections. They filmed interviews, captured the sound of the ocean through cracked windows, and laughed nervously when their cameraman claimed his hit. Reflections smiled before he did. The next morning, their footage was gone. The camera displayed only static, and a single image. The painting, eyes open wider than ever, staring straight into the lens. In time, the house was condemned, yet the painting survived demolition, found beneath rubble, the frame immaculate, glass unbroken. It was moved to the town's small museum, where no one could explain the moisture sealed inside it. A thin film that shimmered like tears. Visitors reported feeling dizzy, hearing faint murmurs behind them. And when one touched the glass, her handprint lingered for days, pulsing faintly as if alive. A new curator arrived, young, optimistic, dismissive of ghost stories. He cleaned the frame, replaced the lighting, and cataloged the work as portrait, unknown subjects. But after closing hours, he noticed something wrong in the reflection of his office window. Three faces behind him, faint and waiting. When he turned, the gallery was empty. Only the low hum of the ventilation filled the silence. Steady, rhythmic, and heartbreakingly familiar. Now the painting travels with rotating exhibits, crossing countries, always returned with the same quiet note. "Do not hang near mirrors." But some say it doesn't need mirrors anymore. Those who've seen it claim that once its gaze meets yours, you'll dream of a room filled with portraits, every face your own, every eye awake. They say it's still changing, still watching, adding new faces to its canvas, one reflection at a time. And if you ever find it at an estate sale, remember, art doesn't always wait to be bought. Sometimes it chooses its owner.